Welcome, folks. We're going to give it just a couple of minutes to let people join up, and then we'll get started.
Hello. Did I join the wrong meeting? Because I don't see the option.
No, I'm seeing you as presenter. So,
oh, okay, great.
Yeah, so we may want to just test real quick that you can share your screen if you're planning on doing that.
I don't see the option to share my screen, actually.
You should be a panelist. So let me let me promote to panelist. Okay.
Okay, there we go.
Good. You see the option now? Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Welcome, everybody. We're going to give it about 2 or 3 more minutes. We've got some more registrations. So just sit tight for a moment if you don't mind, and we'll get started. Thanks. Sam, would you prefer, I'll monitor the chat. Happy to do that, but would you prefer that folks can just ask questions during the session, or would you like to hold till the end? What would you prefer?
People could ask whenever they have a question. I will have some time at the end for questions, but
Great.
Yeah, feel free to chime in whenever.
Awesome. I'm just going to add people talk here. Talk. Oh, cancel. No, I don't want to do that. Talk. I don't know why we're seeing other folks on here. We do that. Okay. Oh, I see. Okay. I think what we'll do, folks, is we'll do questions in the chat because of the way the webinar is set up. And then at the end, we'll have everybody join up as panelists so that everybody can chime in. But if you have any questions during, I will be monitoring the chat, and we'll make sure you get to participate. I'm just going to give it like 1 more minute or 2, and we'll get going. All right, well, let's get started. We've got a nice group. Quick introduction. My name is Doug Krehbel. Use he, his pronouns. I'm the director of the data team at Greenpeace US and one of the co-founders of this event. So pleased everybody can join us. We're halfway through our co-op, middle of the 2nd day. We've had some really great sessions, and I know this one will be too, and I'm very excited about it as well. Sam, I will let you introduce yourself, but I'll just kick it off by saying Sam is a former Bluebonnet Data fellow and a recent Rutgers grad, and who is going to be talking to us about the data research and visualization work that she's done. So without further ado, Sam, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks so much, Doug. Let me share my screen. All right. So hi, everyone. Welcome to the 12 p.m. session. I'm really thrilled to be here. This is the political analysis of fossil fuel projects, which is a bit broad, but you'll learn all about it in just a moment. So this is a project I worked on between March and December 2021. The big question that backdrops this analysis is, how can we empower climate-mindful campaigns? And of course, given the nature of this event, the answer is data. Just to start us off, here's a little bit more about me. I'm Sam Lee. I use she, they pronouns. Nice to meet you all. I graduated from Rutgers a few weeks ago, which is really exciting, and I'm calling from New Jersey today, which is on Lenape land. So I'm an incoming software engineer at Microsoft, and most relevantly, I was a former Bluebonnet Data fellow. Otherwise, I'm a current mutual aider, DIY hobbyist, and lover of sushi. This project was a joint collaboration between my organization, Bluebonnet Data, and a nonprofit Lead Locally. So being from the Bluebonnet side, I can tell you a little bit more about Bluebonnet. So what is Bluebonnet Data? Straight from the website, Bluebonnet recruits people with tech skills to become volunteers for progressive causes, trains fellows on how to apply their technical skills to civic data, and organizes fellows into teams and matches them with a progressive cause. I personally learned about Bluebonnet Data through my peers at college. So the tech space I was in was fairly progressive, and the people I knew had great experiences helping out with campaigns. So even though I didn't really know much about how political entities worked behind the scenes, I knew my values and I knew my skills. So I applied and I was accepted as a fellow, at which point I went through a really thorough orientation. It was basically an intro to political data, and this session basically provided a toolbox of common strategies and lingo. We learned about how to understand voters numerically, how to use NGP Van and Vote Builder, and it also touched on the ethics and security concerns of using sensitive or potentially biased data, which I really appreciated. Moving forward, this orientation went through a longer timeline, covering how to manage projects, track performance, and generally maintain momentum. This part was particularly helpful for me because different campaigns and organizations had very distinct goals in mind. And as fellows, we had to be flexible. So teams have utilized, of course, standard voting or census data, but also data from the IRS, Zillow, web scraping, etc. So a lot of it is learning as you go and adapting to your team's needs. Something that was also really nice was the knowledge that these organizations and campaigns we were matched with already had the expertise about whatever social or political issues they faced. And what they were lacking was the technical expertise. So at this point in time, I was a real newbie in civic tech, and I didn't know much at the time, but the fact that I had a place where my technical knowledge was valued and my lack of political knowledge was accepted and to a degree expected was really nice, and it provided just a really constructive place for me to learn. So that is a great segue into the next column. So fellows gain skills in various areas of coding, data science, and civic tech. As I just hinted at, I learned a lot of new data techniques, as well as how to marry politics and statistics in a way that made sense to me. And my experience with Bluebonnet actually piqued my interest in politics, and I ended up picking up a minor in political science. So yeah, I learned a lot of good stuff. Fellows also do good by helping progressive campaigns and nonprofits analyze data. So there's this moral dilemma I'm sure many of us have had, like regarding the ethics of how tech and data are used today in society. And it was really gratifying to know that this project had very tangible effects on campaigning strategies and voting. And knowing that these skills, these technical skills, don't just exist for the sake of innovation or profit was really nice and notable to me. Finally, fellows build community via the huge network of fellows, Bluebonnet leaders, and supporters. So we have a Slack channel with a really lovely group of people. There are a lot of events that are held, such as workshops and panels and even hackathons from time to time. And through this network, I got the chance to speak here today. That brings me to Lead Locally. I could pull up the website itself, but for now, I could just read this little blurb that they have here as an intro. So Lead Locally is dedicated to electing community leaders across the country to state and local office who pledge to fight back against fossil fuel projects and for a just green economy. So they stand against pipelines and fracking and other man-made environmental horrors, and they stand with candidates who have green values. This is their website, so feel free to visit it. And from the site directly, you could see that their philosophy is that transitioning from fossil fuels starts at the local level. So here's a nice excerpt I found that really sums it up well. So climate change has been framed for years as exclusively decided by the presidency, but some of the most important fights for a just transition happen in our state and city governments. By electing climate champions to city councils, county commissions, and state houses, we can block permitting for new pipelines, ban fracking across states, or win majorities that can pass massive green jobs bills. But too often, local races are understaffed and underfunded, and that's where you can help. So if you do go to the website, they provide some actionable ways to mobilize through calling, texting, and writing postcards, and you can also donate. Moving back to the presentation, I do want to give credit where credit is due. This project was a collaborative effort with myself, Crystal Kim, and Chizu Kim as the Bluebonnet Fellows developing the technical aspects of this project. And John Kwa and Whit Jones were the lead locally team members, guiding the vision, telling us what their stakeholders needed, and providing many resources and advice along the way. So thank you to everyone who worked on this project with me. So here's the task, the big question. How can we use data on fossil fuel projects to comprehensively identify which areas are vulnerable to local electoral organizing? So there are many dimensions to this question, and I'm going to break it down. On one hand, we have partisanship. So how have various counties and districts historically voted, and are there any increases in Democrat vote share? So here we want to see trends in party affiliations. On the other hand, there's voter participation. So what percent of voters participate in major and off-year elections, and what percent of people are unregistered? So now we're asking, who are the people active and inactive in local politics? And on a secret third hand, we have local public opinion. How do people feel about climate change and the development of nearby fossil fuel projects? And this brings the environmental concerns into the picture. So how can we layer these different factors to visualize the competitiveness of each district or county with a fossil fuel project? So here is a project overview with some steps and sub-questions that we had to consider. So first we had to aggregate the data and ask what data points are relevant and necessary, and where can we find them? We then had to build an interactive map that was easily navigable. And to tie these two things together, we had to use color grading, charts, and pins to give the map meaning. And to give you a little preview, we ended up with something like this. So these are the steps we went through more granularly. So on the aggregating data side, we had a bunch of different sources available to us, and we wanted to put them all into one central hub with all the relevant data points. So we had an internal lead locally database on fossil fuel projects. So this is data that they had collected themselves on upwards of 400 pending and final permits for fossil fuel projects around the country. This included pipelines, fuel plants, refineries, compressor stations, and so on and so forth. So through this database, we had data points on the tons per year of carbon and other gaseous emissions produced. We had the locations of these projects, and in turn, the details on local elections, so timelines, term lengths, current people in office, etc. And then there was information on the immediate population surrounding the project. So, and especially it had a focus on people who already face a lot of insecurity and risks. So this included low-income populations, percentages of minority groups in the area, and younger and older generations who may be affected, who may be particularly affected by these fossil fuel projects. The second source of data we used was Civis. So Civis is a database that provides information from VoterBase, TargetSmart, and a bunch of other sources. This is, we relied on this database a lot for most other information that we needed for the project. And this information ranged from demographic details to voting history to political scores calculated through polls. So I can pull up a quick list of the variables that we had to sort through to use the project. There were a lot, so let me pull that up. This is only a fraction of what we had available to us, but just so you could get an idea of what was included, we have some data points on demographics. That's what I was looking for. We have location information, like what school districts and municipal districts this person lives in. And going down, we have some voter history. And I think we got the most utility out of these scores down here, which again are calculated through polls. And these were important because they further informed us about the likelihood of Democrat support and turnout, as well as the climate change related sentiment in different locations. So yeah, Civis was incredibly helpful. Next, we had the census, which is fairly standard. We wanted year-by-year populations on state and district levels. We also wanted the city level populations, but that actually took quite a bit of work. And if anyone was wondering, the R package tidy census is amazing. Finally, there was a Yale source we were able to utilize. It was called a Sweet Spots database, and it was on environmental public opinion across districts. So it recorded the percentage of people who were alarmed, cautious, disengaged, etc., about climate change, and how those numbers varied across different racial groups. And this database also covered how many people were willing to volunteer time and labor to environmental causes. So again, this just gives us more insights on how we can mobilize these people. To my knowledge, only the census data is publicly available, and generally I organize this list in terms of how much the project relied on the data source. So this is the tech we used. I use tech very loosely. I really just mean languages and tools that were helpful in this process. So Python was the MVP here. It helped me aggregate everything into one place. I used SQL to query from Civis. And Google Sheets is so much more powerful than I'd given it credit for. So those were the primary things that I used throughout this project. And two other things. So Geocodio is an API I used to map coordinates to specific districts in the country. So a lot of the data we had was not complete, and there was some cleaning work that I had to do. And this was just a really helpful resource to get that work done. You just put the coordinates into an API and it spits out the address or the district. So that was really nice. And then, as I said before, R was really helpful in terms of working with the census. So that was the majority of my work, and I'm probably going to zip through this next section on building the map. So we had to imagine how a user would intuitively make use of this map. And then the necessary views we needed were the US map divided by both county and district. And then if a user wanted to, let's say, click on a specific area, we'd need to have a view to zoom in. So we'd need each state, each county, and each district individually. We built this using JavaScript, D3, and HTML, and then JSON shape files available online allowed us to achieve these different views. So beep boop, we put it all together, and this was the result. The quality of this video is not the best. Let me see if it was a me problem before. If it's still blurry, I could pull up the actual visualization. But basically, these are all the counties in the US colored by partisan score. So that score is available through Civis. And if I recall correctly, the score estimates the likely partisan preference of a particular voter, and the color captures the average in the area. And I forgot to mention this before, but like Civis, the Civis data is all about like individual voters, and like the aggregation was by county and district. So we have that here, and I'm going to pull up the actual visualization because it is a bit easier to read and see. So we just saw county, and this view is of the districts. It's very similar. You could go through, and hovering allows you to get more information on what exactly you're looking at. And all these little orange dots, each one represents a fossil fuel project. So, and if you hover over these dots, you could see that, for example, this is a permit application. This is another permit app. Yeah, so there is a variety here. Let me see if I missed anything. Yeah, so we could next dive into the specific views. So let's check out North Dakota. There seems to be some stuff going on here. So if we go into North Dakota, it takes a bit to load. We can now see the district itself, and we could more easily kind of distinguish the different fuel projects from one another. And oh, because it's only one district. So now I've zoomed into the state, but because it's only one district, I need to click again to actually get into that specific district. And if we wait just a second, we can see the district here, and scrolling down gives us a lot of data. So this is the project data. So what I mentioned before, we had the specific type of project that this is, the emissions it produces, where it is, etc. And we also have some district level data. So we have the different political scores from Civis, as well as the demographics of this district by race and ethnicity and age. And then going down further, we have city level data. So the same data, just in another table. And we also have, voter registration population data. So same thing, just presented a little differently. Don't look too closely. A lot of this data is out of date, and there were a few inconsistencies we had to address that isn't reflected in the current data being displayed. So this is a very rudimentary rendering. So there are definitely improvements to be made here visually. As you can see, it's a bit of a hassle to get through all this data, but the main focus for this project was just to get the right information on the page and to focus on the map itself. So this was a bit secondary, but still very, very important.
Hi, Sam. We have a quick question from the chat.
Yeah.
I think somebody's wondering if this is publicly available, like how
this is not publicly available. You'd have to reach out to Lead locally to access this visualization.
So from Lead locally. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So this was the first phase of the project, and I'm actually no longer working on this project. It's been passed on. So let me go back. Let's see. Yeah, these were just screen recordings I'd done, but I just showed you everything that I had recorded previously. So let's move through this. All right, so the current status of this project is that there is a new team of volunteers working on the next iteration of the map. I believe they're using R instead of JavaScript to better organize the data. And they're also considering alternative databases because, as I mentioned before, the ones we were using were sometimes inconsistent and unreliable. So Courtney Stowers and Lucas Husted are the current technical leads, I believe, and they're doing some great work right now. Moving forward, this map will help grassroots organizers and candidates target specific areas with projects, and Lead locally serves candidates across over 10 states. So I could pull that up too. If you go to the website, you could see all the candidates that they're currently supporting. So there's a very comprehensive list here. And through this visualization, they can tailor campaign strategies, get out the vote efforts, and mobilization. And here's some other ideas you might want to think about, some questions that could help us brainstorm on ways to improve this project. So what other layers of data can help enhance the existing aggregations? Ooh. So for example, like maybe we could have a greater emphasis on vote history, and that could allow us to animate the color grades that we saw before, perhaps see the Democrat support over time and how it changes. Perhaps we can add another legend with patterns like stripes or polka dots aside from just color, so you can visually see what locations have Democrats or Republicans currently in leadership. And then another question is, what UI features can make the visualization more comprehensible? Perhaps breadcrumbs could show how deeply you're zoomed into the map, and then you could go to any level that you choose from whatever level you're at. And then perhaps we could upgrade the tooltips so that instead of just showing the name of the project or the name of the county, it could trigger a sidebar of sorts that displays even more information so that you have a better idea of what the area is like just by hovering. So there's a lot to sit on. And if you have any ideas, I would really love to hear them. So that is the end of my presentation. I will pass it over to Bluebonnet in just a second, but here's my contact information, Bluebonnets, as well as Lead localies. If you do want to reach out, please don't hesitate. And I'll pause now if there are any other questions.
I am making actually everyone on the session a panelist so that everybody can be seen and be heard. So that'll just take me 1 second. I'm finishing that up.
Yeah, take your time.
Hope I haven't left anybody out. So we've got lots of folks.
So Sam, do you want me to hop into Bluebonnet section and then open for Q&A and everything and anything?
Oh yeah, that works. That works.
Okay.
Let me stop sharing.
Let me know when I should get started. Looks
Oh,
like
to answer the question in the chat, the recommended R package was tidy census. I'll put that in there.
So folks are actually going to have to join and rejoin. So we may just want to wait a second so that everybody can be promoted. Okay. But folks, yeah, some folks might just want to stay in as they are. Yeah, the Zoom webinars are a little odd that way. So you can either have somebody be an attendee or a panelist, and if they're just an attendee, they can't. I think they're muted. So sorry if it's a little complicated. But.
No worries. So should we get on to the next section or continue waiting?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think everybody's in the room, back in the room, and if anybody else wants to get unmuted, I will do that. So.
Okay. So just to frame this piece. The star of the show is Sam and Sam's great work that she just shared with us all. And so we are going to make space and time for Q&A on that and discussion in a minute. But since we have a lot of time here, we wanted to talk a bit more about Bluebonnet, what we do, how folks can get involved, and particularly how we think about and invest in supporting data activism. So I'm going to take maybe 10 minutes or so to talk about that. I can share my entire screen. Can somebody verbally let me know, are we seeing the Bluebonnet Data fostering data activism?
Not yet.
I'm getting please grant browser access. I have done that. Forgive me for the technical difficulties here.
We'll get there.
Worst case, we could go without visual aid, but let me try again.
Are you not seeing a share screen option?
I am, but it's not letting me actually do it. Let me try one more thing.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I'm seeing it now.
Forgive me, that seemed to shut off my own microphone. Okay, forget the technical difficulties. I'm going to walk through this without the visual aid. This is relatively brief anyway. Again, the star of the show is Sam, and so we want to leave a lot of time for discussion on that fantastic project. We just wanted to highlight how Bluebonnet tries to foster data activism like Sam's work. So a bit of background on us, we've been around since 2018, started on campaign work and have branched into a lot of grassroots activism on nonprofits, likely locally. We tend to invest in places where there's not already much data and tech staffing or resources. So there's a lot of room for impacts there that our data activists do. We typically use the phrase fellows, but in this context, our fellows are data activists, and we really want to invest in them. Where our fellows contribute, we have two programs. We have data and campaign tech. The data fellowship is what we're best known for, and that's what Sam was contributing to here. But we also have a campaign tech program where it's really investing in the tech platforms that we use on campaigns, as well as electoral organizing nonprofits. And what I really wanted to talk about is how we think about fostering data activism. So it's too bad I can't share the visuals here, but a few highlights of the way we think about kind of some of the things Sam talked about in training and support and setting folks up for success through Bluebonnet is a lot of the data that folks work with in the space is very niche. Like Sam came in fantastically skilled in data and some political background, but knowing what those partisanship scores are, knowing how to break down by districts, by counties, et cetera. Some of the stuff become really niche information and knowledge, and we try to train specifically on those gaps that folks come in with so that we can really maximize their impact. And we try to keep the work rooted in the needs of organizers and communities. And so we work very closely with the campaigns and organizations we work with, locally, to make sure that we're supporting the best ways we can. And we always want to foster collaboration. So Sam worked, as she mentioned, on a team, and everyone was able to leverage their skills to really excel in this project. And the last piece I want to talk about is how we think about movement building. So investing in community with these things. And so we do a lot to foster community among our over 1,000 fellows we've had, and ongoing, and like working together, supporting each other, having working groups and collaborative documentation and resources. We also think a lot about investing in people. So we do a lot, as Sam mentioned, this experience led to her minoring in political science. We have a lot of people who go on to have full-time work in this space, and we love to see that. And we always look to invest in our people, as well as investing in the movement, like I said before, where data can have the most impact, which is, where other people might not be investing and where data resources don't already exist. So that's it for me. Again, sorry for the technical difficulties there. I think we want to open now to Q&A and discussion on any and all of this. Really want to spotlight Sam's work. So any question, discussion on that?
I'm happy to kick off. Just want to say thanks so much. We have been trying to do some of this targeting work as well, but it's just wonderful to see such a comprehensive and kind of thorough model to it. I guess the question is, moving forward from here, if there's any kind of plans, or do you see any value to, since these are predictive scores, doing kind of some machine learning or loop feedback on this when we see how people vote, and if there's been any discussion on that. Check.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, so the team that I had worked with, at the time, yeah, the two of us were an undergrad and the other was a data scientist. And we didn't get around to talking about machine learning, but I think that would be a really useful tool to use, and something to implement for the project. I want to say that they might be thinking about that now with the new team. I'm not sure what the skill sets are for that, but it did start out in my iteration as just a visualization, but I do believe that they have bigger plans for the future of this project. And hopefully they can implement some machine learning techniques to better inform campaigns. That's a great question.
Sarah has a question in chat. Sarah, would you like to just say that one directly, or would you like me to just read it for chat? I think people can get off mute. Well, I'll go ahead and put it out there. So Sarah asked, what are ways you protect data and train fellows around data safety and data security?
There was a portion of our orientation that was dedicated to security, because a lot of the time we are handling sensitive information. And a lot of time it does depend on the team and how you're using the data, but generally there is this standard where you cannot share sensitive data, and a lot of the repositories, they're under the organization and they have to be kept private. Yeah, it's been a while since since orientation, so I can't remember the specifics around that, but yeah, there was a pretty heavy focus on the security aspect of it.
That's good to hear, especially when you're working with voter data. It's a privilege to steward. Yeah. Anybody else? Any other questions for the Bluebonnet group, either about the voter or about the program in general? Please don't be shy.
Yes, people are thinking I could chime in a little more, adding on to what Jake said. So I talked in my presentation about my experience as a data fellow. I actually was like a political tech fellow. I think this was like the first iteration of it, but so as a data fellow, I get to actually use like languages and use my tech skills to build projects. But as a tech fellow, I was leveraging existing technology. So I remember like learning how to use Action Sprout to campaign on social media. And that kind of gave me greater tools, and it gave me greater insights into actually how to use political data and political services and technologies that already exist to leverage campaigns. So that was also a really great experience.
Cool. We have a question in the chat about the mapping technology that you used. Is it something open source, or is it I'm not sure if it's Esri or something else?
Yeah, so the mapping language, like built it using JavaScript D3. I'm not sure if that is open source. Let me just look that up. Does anyone know off the top of their head?
So, yeah.
Oh yeah, it is open source.
So that's not done using Esri or anything like that. It's just the JavaScript, the mapping capabilities. Wow, that's great. Somebody did put the link to Bluebonnet Data in the chat, so definitely take a look at that link. It's a really exciting program. Any other questions for the panel? All right, well, we've seen some, so Ranjani asked, what inspired you to become a data fellow with Bluebonnet? What brought you there and made you do all that work?
So the first time I learned about Bluebonnet, it was kind of just through a friend. I saw that she had helped out with a campaign, and I was like, in the back of my mind, I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I kind of, in my mind, I kind of shelved it, like, oh, okay, that's not really where my interests lie. But then I'm trying to remember when I joined Bluebonnet. I believe it was at the very start of quarantine, which was, of course, a time of a lot of political strife and contention. So, being someone in quarantine, I had a lot of time in my hands, and I started reading a lot, and I became more aware of a lot of the issues in politics. And I wanted to find like that intersection between things that I was already passionate about, like technology and how to use tech to help people. And I wanted to marry that with government and politics. So I remembered Bluebonnet, and I looked into that a little more. And I did have some hesitations in applying because I didn't have a lot of political background. But even so, I felt there was a need for like transparency and accountability in local offices. And it was a cause that was really worth dedicating my time and effort to. So I applied, and I am here today. Very happy.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, agreed. Just a really great presentation, some great work as well. I don't see any other questions in chat, but I will use this time to pitch the session that's coming up right after this at 1 o'clock, which kind of dovetails very nicely with this. I think, Sam, you mentioned the Yale program for climate change communication earlier, or somebody did. So Jennifer Marlin from that group is giving a session on finding the alarmed, how to use voter file micro targeting for strategic communication. So a lot of great work, similar work to what Sam has done. Also, again, the session's been recorded, so you're welcome to come back to it, or if there's anybody that you wish had seen it, it will be up on the ExpoPass site within 24 hours, so probably sometime tomorrow. So you're welcome to that. If anybody doesn't have any other questions, I want to thank everyone for coming. It was a great group. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Bluebonnet, for joining us. And everybody have a great rest of the co-op and a great rest of the day.
Thank you so much for having us. Have a good one.